Holler if you hear me, and welcome to this week's edition of Luke Shocks, where the headlines keep on coming, so I keep on coming up to knock 'em down. A man attempting to set a Tesla Star charging station on fire accidentally set himself ablaze as this week's winner of the Poetic Justice Award. NASA is planning to shut down more instruments on the Voyager 2 space probe to conserve its power reserves so the mission can be extended, and the Voyager 2 probe is not just the farthest from Earth man-made object that's ever been put out there, but also now is nearing the 50th year of its mission. So it is a prop of a government establishment that is nearing 50. They have to shut down more brain function to keep it going long past its usefulness, pretty much making Voyager 2 nothing more than the space equivalent of a host on The View. Brooklyn now has a music venue that is canceling a performance by Amanda Palmer since one of the accusers of her ex-husband Neil Gaiman was now publicly outcrying about this performance. And let's all drink in the irony of a male feminist being caught as a criminal is now going scot-free, while a woman associated with him is suffering more consequences for her career. The Steak and Shake chain is now going to be switching out the way that it makes its french fries, replacing vegetable oil with beef tallow over the sake of them wanting to go and adopt the sort of policies being put up there by RFK's controlled Health and Human Services campaign to try to make America healthier, which is a massive improvement over the previous controller of the Health and Human Services having the "it puts the lotion on the skin" policies about health. A Minnesota National Guardsman wing is now apparently receiving emails that they are supposed to have any members of the National Guard with gender dysmorphia go out of their way to now voluntarily step down, because knowing Minnesota, it would be a bit of a contradiction of their duty for the Minnesota National Guard to also have members that are going to be involved in the massive far-left violence that goes on in that state that the National Guard is supposed to be called in to stop. Mateo Paz is an 18-year-old who just recently received a $250,000 prize from the Regenson Science Talent Search on account of him inventing an AI algorithm that was able to sift through tons upon tons upon tons of data at NASA that he was hired to sift through as an intern, and discovered 1.5 million space objects on behalf of NASA. And the fact that this is actually a teenager who has a functioning brain and is able to do something useful and is able to find an actual good use for AI and all that, let's just say that you can damn well guess that this is not the product of somebody that actually thought Joy Reid getting fired was a bad thing. And the ongoing controversies behind the release of the live-action Snow White remake are accumulating and continuing. Even now, with all of these said controversies coming up, they're now being accompanied by objections to the film not having dwarf actors being, getting to do live-action portrayals of the Seven Dwarves in this live-action portrayal of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, including the special attention brought to voice actor doing the voice of Grumpy in the film and real-life dwarf Martin Kleba lamenting the cancellation of the film's premiere as being a little disappointing. And you know it's bad when you think he would be used to things being a little and disappointing, and yet here it goes. And yes, if you go and look back at Martin Kleba, he is one of those dwarf character actors out there who's not exactly a name. He's never been given some big career-defining major role where then you look at him and keep on bringing up that, like say with Peter Dinklage, who of course, although he had been acting and had been doing things in acclaimed indie films for a while, like The Station Agent and that one film with Steve Buscemi and Catherine Keener, whose name escapes me, and also another one of those famous before they were famous appearances on Seinfeld, where you only ever heard him on the phone. But then besides that, also, of course, major roles in bigger movies like Elf before becoming Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones, and also Vern Troyer having been mostly a stuntman, being the stunt double for the baby in Baby's Day Out, as well as doing things like being the baby version of Joe in the little gorilla suit in the Disney remake of Mighty Joe Young before exploding with popularity and name recognition for his role as Mini-Me. Martin Kleba is one of those guys who has had speaking roles and things like that, but the biggest thing he's ever had to his name was a starring role in the Comedy Central original movie Knee-High P.I. And well, let's just say that there is something special to say about Disney and its inclusivity fetish. The fact that, a character like the title character of Snow White, who has the name because of her skin being as white as snow, and that horror pandering version of Snow White as a movie from the 90s with the final girl from Freddy vs. Jason and Sigourney Weaver, called with the subtitle of Tale of Terror, is more accurate to Snow White than this movie. But at the very same time, you've got dwarves in this film, probably the most famous dwarves on film, second only to the Munchkins from The Wizard of Oz, and yet you're going to have voice actors voicing the dwarves, but still the dwarves are going to be CGI abominations against nature. Trust me. The last minute rundown of what they're going to be doing to try and streamline the dwarf CGI is not going to do anything to improve upon what we've been seeing in those trailers since they pulled the 180 on trying to shoot the CGI dwarves in place of those Portland Pinkos that they were going to have in place of the dwarves, but also the fact that they shot all kinds of new prologue footage with a little child actor in place of Snow White. Yeah, that's not going to do anything. And the fact that a film like the Jet Li DMX vehicle Cradle to the Grave has Martin Kleba in the cast and is giving him more screen time in frame in a scene that's supposed to be about Tom Arnold making Jet Li have a cage fight with Tito Ortiz is not exactly a good sign for this. And well, let's just say this is another example of how, oh my God, this is completely a hilarious shit show. I said in Flashcast last night as a super chat about how all the people out there, all those content creators that have been rightfully bashing the Snow White remake from the root to the fruit, if anything, in a bit of reverse psychology, in a bit of that showing charity to your fellow man or woman, and at the end of the day, when all of this failure for Snow White as a remake comes and goes, they should all go from nerdrotic all the way down. Give her a nice big thank you note, maybe even a nice decorative edible fruit basket or something, or some other type of bouquet of flowers to Rachel Zegler, thanking her for all of the content she has provided, and the fact that, well, as usual with these modern day, flopbusters, you want to call them or whatever, the only people that have been profiting from these films directly have been the people online that will incessantly lament their failure and cheer on the failure for them to get their own money. And that's not my opinion. I know I'm right. So I want to thank you for watching. Subscribe so my channel hits 10,000 subs. Become a member today and shop my art store at the second link below, where you can buy my art or commission me, or you can support me directly there with a donation. So until then, felines, slam it, lick it, suck it, and see you, Space Cowboy.